Hey everyone, and welcome to the Irenic Ref podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Gross. The word irenic means aimed at or aiming towards peace. And my goal with this podcast is to try to create a bridge between coaches and officials by showing the humanity of each other in a more robust way, which isn't necessarily achievable in the minimal interactions a coach and official may experience during a game. With all that said, let's get to it. Today's guest is in his 9th year of officiating basketball in an organized sense. He has officiated 3 South Dakota 16 games, 2 state tournaments at the high school level. He's also a collegiate official working NAIA, D3, and Division II games, and has officiated in the NAIA Nationals first round, and also was an alternate official during the Northern Sun Intercollegiate Conference Tournament. While he isn't officiating, him and his wife coach their kids' basketball teams. And a fun fact is that he played beach football with actor Josh Duhamel. Please welcome Jake Studer. Jake, welcome.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, it's always great to be here with you. Well, not here specifically, but just in person with you, whether that's officiating or just, sitting down somewhere and chatting. So I'm glad you could make it this evening. It's kind of just an interesting thing because both you and I somewhat started around the same time, roughly. I mean,
Yeah.
you said you had about 4 or 5 years of a little bit like rec city league stuff, and I was kind of like doing some lower level stuff my first few years because I think I'm in year 10, you're in year 9, and so we kind of had a similar kind of time frame, and it's kind of fun just seeing how we're progressing and even some of the trips that we've taken, whether that's to Carlton or St. Olaf or just things like that. And, just like tell me a little bit about your experience with, just starting off. Like how have you seen the experience go from year 0 to now? What has it been like in that trajectory?
Yeah. So I had quite a gap there in my officiating history. So I really started when I was 19. I was in college at SDSU, and I reffed intramural basketball with Chris Stabner, now Rapid City Stevens coach. Yeah. So he kind of brought me along that intramural route, and I liked it, and it was fun, and it was a way to stay in the game. And then I had a long stretch there of not officiating. I played amateur baseball, I played city basketball, a lot of stuff like that. So I just didn't ref organized basketball at that point, and I didn't have any kids yet. Just got married, so just had other things going on. Yeah. So a little bit of a hiatus, and then I got back into reffing a little bit later. So I mean, obviously, I'm a little bit older than you. Yeah. So I had a few years under my belt, and then got back in on the high school side of things a little bit later in life. But yeah, it's been fun. It's always fun. Yeah, and you kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, you're kind of working in the college track and kind of seeing where that's going and where it'll let you go. Yeah. I don't really have, I have a goal in mind, but ultimately I'm just trying to do the best I can every night I'm out there and seeing how far it takes me. And if this is as far as I get, that's fine. And if I get further, that's fine too. It's just, it's a real nice passion of mine that I'm just trying to pursue. And it's that, that old boring mantra, one day at a time. Yeah. You're just trying to get a little bit better every day.
Sure. And so going with that kind of comes the camps that you go to and different experiences in that camp realm for trying to work your way up. And so maybe talk about a few camps that, maybe not specific camps, but like talk about some of the experiences, even that first year you went to camp, and to the like most recent one that you and I went to this past year. Like, how have those been? What's been going on with each progression of that?
Yeah. So my first camp experience was really going to the GPAC camp. I had 4 years of high school basketball under my belt and kind of got a personal invite to go down to the GPAC camp and didn't really know what to expect. And, it's just high school kids playing basketball in the summer, so it's not crazy competitive. But I did well enough, and I got hired on the spot down there. Yeah. And that's kind of the initial experience, and I didn't really know what to expect. And then from there, I haven't been to a serious camp, like a Division I, big time camp or anything like that. So I don't know quite exactly how that experience goes, but a little more serious camp at the D2 side, where they're really nitpicking on various things that you're doing, and their expectation is you take that and you immediately get better. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that only ramps up the farther up the camp circuit you go. That's been my experience with the camp side of things, and it's just doing I always say I'm just going out there and I'm going to try to do my best, funnel information, and whatever you can manage to implement as quickly as you can. You're trying to do that, but at the end of the day, you're just working on being your best.
Yeah. And what do you think out of the camp, like the biggest, this is the biggest thing I had to fix immediately? Was there something that was I had to fix this immediately, or was there a collection of things? I just remember, I'll just give you a basis. I just remember the thing that I was told really quickly was your mechanics need to be a lot more crisp. And whether that was at the table or just at the spot, that was mine. It was just very lazy. So was there something you had to really work on?
Yeah. My patience was the main thing right away. I would fly through my table signals. I would be way too quick on the whistle, at contact rather than seeing contact, letting the play finish, and then deciding. Yep. So it's just that patience part of it was the biggest thing, and I had to fix that right away. You get more plays right that way. Yep. But yeah, a lot of the similar stuff, I'm sure. Sure. They're always looking for a little crisper mechanics, but for me, patience was a big thing right away. Yeah,
I think everybody can work on patience, but the sooner you can figure that out, the quicker you'll be moving yourself up. And and I've seen it in you, is the quick way that you figured out that patience aspect has then shot you up. Okay, I'm doing NAI. Okay, now I'm doing NAI first round. Now I'm doing Northern Sun stuff more consistently rather than just because I think you did a few, but then you're boom, more consistent NSIC stuff.
Yeah. The patience really separates. And even at the camp that you mentioned that we both went to, and we got dinged on the same thing. Yep. We both were too quick. Yep. And it happens from time to time. And that's, that patient thing is really what separates guys as you move up. You see the game, and the game slows down a little bit for you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey everyone, I'm doing something a little different right here. Jake took a little time, spent a little time after his interview with me to record another interview, an exclusive interview that he decided to talk more about his training and how he works through things and how he worked more to perfect his craft. And so I really wanted to plug this right here. And so you can go to my Patreon. I've linked it in the description below to see this interview with him. I think you would benefit greatly from it if you are someone who is trying to improve your officiating, or if you're trying to work your way up in through the high school and the college realms. So again, thank you, and enjoy the rest of this interview.
And so let's just get into a different aspect now. I kind of gave a little bit of an introduction, but give us a little more introduction of yourself, your family, maybe first where you grew up, where you graduated from college, who your family is, and just kind of go from there.
Sure. So originally from Laverne, Minnesota, bounced around. My mother was a nursing home administrator, so we bounced around quite a bit. Actually lived in New Mexico for a year as a child, but ultimately graduated from Laverne High School. I went to South Dakota State, played baseball, met my wife there. We moved to Sioux Falls. She's from Sioux Falls. Yeah. So we've lived in Sioux Falls ever since then, and been married for 15 years now. I got a fifth grader and a second grader who play football and soccer and basketball and all the things that we chase them around in. So we do that, and we like to go to the lake and enjoy summer. But it's always a welcome sign when winter comes because it's basketball season.
Yep. And if I remember correctly, is your wife have some sort of connection to basketball, or is a friend of a friend or a relative of a relative on her side, or?
She played basketball at Washington High.
Okay, yeah.
Played intramurals. That's how we met at SDSU. We played intramural basketball, and she loves college basketball. Yep. So she's a big fan of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And we work. I mean, it works well together. To have that kind of working relationship where she lets me do it because she likes it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think I was thinking of, just the playing at Washington and probably at a high level in South Dakota, at least the AA level for girls. And so, but yeah, appreciate that introduction there. And now we kind of talked about how you somewhat got started. So tell me again, like you talked about the coach out at Stevens that kind of got you going. But was there also like other people maybe that had an influence on you and again, reiterate that kind of starting point for yourself?
Yep. So kind of during that span when I wasn't officiating in my 20s, I was playing competitive baseball, amateur baseball, competitive softball, playing pickup basketball and city league basketball and here and there. Well, Jason Reisdorfer was a guy I played softball with, and he officiated, football and basketball, of course. So he knew I reffed, city league and stuff like that on the side. And he's like, you got to switch to high school. So he just finally broke me down after a few years and convinced me to do it. I was 30 when I got into organized high school basketball. So between him and then Paul Seville, who, got me a lot of games and you'll attest to this, but that's how you get better is doing a lot of games. So doing a lot of kids stuff at the Pentagon, doing JV, a lot of JV games at, in Sioux Falls. You see good basketball, you see enough basketball, and you get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's even what I had just recently had John Rasmussen on here. And you'll see John Rasmussen, you'll see Matt Cadwell, you'll see Jordan Fast. Do lots of games at the Pentagon. And that's exactly what he said. The more games you have, the more plays you see, and the easier it is to catalog things and then make the right decisions in the future. It's fun talking about Jason because he's been a pretty big influence for quite a few people in the area. And even just like, I mean, not to shift to him, but like he even goes to Lincoln and talks to kids in a coaching class or officiating class as well. And so it just has a pretty big impact. I'm going to get away from that because maybe in the future we'll have him on here as well. But just tell me now about like a fun story that you've had while officiating, whether that was during a game with other officials or, pre-game, post-game, something like that. Is there a fun story that you have with officials?
Yeah. In game, and I'm guessing you've worked with Ricketts before. He's always a hoot to work with because he'll always say something funny to you during a timeout, or he just kind of keeps the game light and fun. So it's always great to work with him. He's kind of always playing these little games with you, like, yeah, you had way too many whistles that quarter, or whatever you might be talking about. I don't always know what he's talking about, but it's always fun to work with him just because he keeps it light and fun, and and ultimately that's what we're gonna, we're there to do a job, but you're gonna be away from your family, you're gonna travel. You might as well make it fun what you're doing. So that's what I really appreciate about working with him, and other guys do that too, obviously, but he's the one that comes top of mind. For that.
And did you have one that was off the court as well, or just
off the court? I mean, you mentioned it kind of in the intro too, you get into a wild road trip, we had the snowstorm deal, which was crazy. And, it's just hanging out with the guys type of thing. So I always think about going to Salem. You go to Salem and Gino, after the game, comes down and says, hey, guys, come on over and stop by and grab a beer or something, before you head out of town. And he just wants to talk because he loves basketball too, and those guys want to talk, and that's always fun. You know?
Absolutely. And one of those guys, like Gene, he's been around the game for a long time. I think, if I remember correctly, he was like South Dakota boys like basketball official of like, I don't even want to know. It was back a ways. But that type of guy, he'll always come in and give you a good sort of like post game in a sense. But I think for the most part, as an official, he knows like, this is necessary, and these calls were correct, and these are pertinent, and these are the good ones to get. And there's not too much. I don't ever see too much downing from him. It's just always good
because he's lived it. He knows he knows what's going on, and he's not the standard. I know he's watching his grandkid play, and he's not the standard parent or grandparent in the stands hollering at you. He knows what's going on. So it's nice to hear from, because he'll tell you, hey, well, what happened with this play? Maybe the questionable one in the game or whatever, and he just wants he doesn't care win or lose. So he just wants to hear the stories too.
Yep.
And he wants to have fun, and he wants to make sure everybody's having a good time when they come to Salem.
Yeah, absolutely. And not that he's like a coach or anything like that. So there's fun and memorable interactions with Gene or other officials that kind of have retired, or clinicians, anything like that. But with a coach, have you had a memorable interaction with them? If you have one, two, or anything like that, on the court, off the court, however you want to talk about it.
So the one I think back to the most was right when I was kind of on the verge of getting to the varsity level, and I was doing a JV game at Lincoln, and it was Harrisburg at Lincoln.
Okay.
And so we're doing the sophomore, so it'd go JV and then sophomore. So you're doing a back-to-back. So you do the JV game, then you're doing the sophomore game, and then the varsity is going to come on the court. Well, we're at the end of the game for the sophomore game, and Scott Langrock is watching in the corner.
Yep.
And we have a whole bunch of stuff, chaos, really had to manage the last minute of the game for the sophomore game.
Yep.
And game gets done, and we're going off, and Scott Langrock grabs me by the shoulder, and he goes, "What is your name?" I go, "Jake Studer."
Yeah.
And he goes, "I'm going to watch for you. I'm going to put in a good word. You did a really good job with that end of the game stuff." And that was a great feeling as a young official when a head coach of a varsity team, who they're just, out there waiting for their game to start, and he sees you doing a good job in a lower level game, and puts in a good word for you with whoever, which I didn't even know at the time, anybody, as just kind of getting started. So that was a memorable, coming off the court feeling of, hey, these guys are really watching, and they care about kind of what's going on, and if they see you a good job, they let you know.
Well, and who's coming up too? Like who's going to be a person that's going to come up and do my games, and I want that person. And now it's like I want Jake every night, but it's like this is the type of official that I want,
right?
And so I'm going to put in a good word for them. And I'm trying to think back. There was something with I don't know. I think it was you. I don't know if you remember, but I think it was you and I were on a game at the Pentagon, and it was early in both of our careers. And I bring this up just because I think it's funny to think about. Was I think we were both kind of at that same point, 3 years in, and I think I said to you, hey, next game I want to see you come on the court a little bit and bounce the ball and do things like that. And then immediately after that, you're like, I'm out. You just were gone because the next person came on the court. I think it was you. I don't know if you remember that or not.
It's not ringing a bell off the top of my head. But.
Yeah, sorry. I was just thinking about that right now. I'm like, I think that was Jake, and I'm pretty sure it was Jake. And it was really funny just saying that to you, knowing because the funny thing is I thought you were younger than me, and I thought you were way newer than me. And so I'm like, I'm gonna give this new official some tips. And come lo and behold, I saw you probably a year and a half later, and you're doing a bunch of the Sioux Falls Christian games. You're doing a bunch of the AA games, and I'm like, I don't think I actually knew who this person was, and so I don't know.
And that's a good segue because you bring up a good point of when I was newer too, and I think either one of us, we could go back to a game we did when we were 2 years in or 3 years in and be like, what were we doing? Yeah. Just the stuff that you learn along the way. But that story kind of reminds me back to when I was newer, and we went a 4-man crew, and a girls boys doubleheader.
Yep.
And there was a veteran guy. He did the girls game, and then had me jump in on the boys game, or vice versa. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I sat behind the scores table on my game off, and just took notes, as I was, as if I was the observer. Yep. And I think that's good. It's good because you can see how other guys do it. Yep. And I made the mistake of maybe reading those notes back to after the game, and one of my partners afterwards yeah, I probably don't want to do that. Yeah. with that particular guy. Yeah. But he got a good laugh. He's like, who's this guy critiquing this veteran guy or whatever? But it was, you think back to some of that stuff, like, what was I thinking at the time? But it was good for me as a younger official. It helped me get better.
No, correct.
And, as a veteran official, if I had any advice, we're always trying to get better. Yep. And I think we're on the same page of any advice is good advice. Yep. If somebody sees something and they think it looks wrong, that could be a red flag. Bell go off in your head, hey, I should watch this tape. And, is that a pattern that I'm making a bad habit of?
Yep. Correct. So. And I think that's something important too, because even even though you may be a veteran or like us, you may be like, I'd say middle of the road is kind of where we're at
Yeah.
now. Even if a newer official just simply, whether they say something like a critique or they say, I saw you do this during the game, you know, or even Wayne Carney last year, he said, hey, there's a kid from, I think it was Washington. He's like, there's a kid from Washington, number 34. He had his jersey untucked the whole time. He said, a newer official comes in, watches this game with me, and says, why aren't they addressing that? And then now you have something you got to explain where, you know, sometimes we simply don't see those things, but we have to be better than that. And so we can't just do it for the sake of the state observer. We can't just do it for the clinician. It's for the newer official that's seeing us and watching us officiate and saying, well, if they're not doing it, why do I have to do it?
Exactly. You want to be a leader, so you want to be on top of, you know, everything that we need to be on top of.
Yep.
Set a good example and, you know, lead in that direction. You know,
Yep.
say it, you know, do as I say, not as I do,
Yeah.
type of thing. We want to be better than that, like you said. So I totally agree.
Yeah.
I love feedback from wherever it comes from. You know, newer, you know, same level, or you know, somebody veteran. I mean, we always want to take that advice and use it.
Yep.
I mean, that's what we're ultimately we're trying to get better every day. That's,
Yep.
like I said before.
And I think those in-court ones are really essential too. So like when he came in at halftime and asked that question, it was like, okay, well now we got to – well, that one ended up being the second half. But he'll come in at halftime sometimes and do those things too.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice when that happens, but you're not always going to get that. So you have to mentally have that capacity to understand, okay, what can we fix out there? And this is one of those. But kind of on the similar vein of like jerseys and officiating, but rules, like is there a rule in your 9-10 years that you've seen come into the game that you've been like, this one is like one that I really have liked the addition of?
So I actually kind of like the rule changes that just came out for this year.
Yeah.
I started, the shot clock was already in place when I had started.
Okay. Yeah.
But I just think back of when I was in high school and they didn't have a shot clock. Mm-hmm. And the shot clock is so much better for the game. But I think that the rule changes with the penalty reset each quarter is going to be beneficial. I think, not that we would want to ever admit this, but I think it sinks into our subconscious of when the team foul bonus was at 7 for the half.
Yep.
And I think officials get self-conscious of getting to the bonus too early.
Yep. And
we might pass on some early fouls that could clean up the game.
Yep.
Or we pass on some fouls late in the half to avoid the bonus. So I think that penalty reset each quarter will allow us to call more fouls without that subconscious of we're getting to the bonus too early.
Yeah, and then I think it also, sorry if I interrupted you, but I think it also worked two ways. Is we're going to be calling more fouls and the players are going to adjust a lot quicker because they know that fifth foul is going to be 2 shots and not just 1.
Right.
And
right. And it changes a little bit of the end of game scenario and maybe avoids some of the extra fouling at the end of the game.
Yeah. Which again,
we'll see how it works out.
Yeah,
I don't know how people are going to play it, but
and I think that could again eliminate some intentional fouls that someone doesn't want called, because we've seen that happen. We get to the close to the end of the game, we got to get a foul, and now they're grabbing people, and that's been a point of emphasis. So now we change it to 5, and we got something that's different. It's like they try to actually hit the ball, or they try to hit the hand, or they try to grab the ball. Now we got a 5th foul we're shooting 2 instead of chasing around for 7 more fouls or 6 more fouls, whatever that discrepancy is. So good rule, adding in this 5 fouls, shooting 2 free throws. I got to ask, did you play halves when you were in high school?
No, we were at quarters, and I don't like the halves that Minnesota does either. They get an extra 4 minutes a game overall, but I don't.
I think the flow kind of lacks in that. It kind of, people get tired. The game kind of slows down. And
you don't. I mean, you're missing out on 2 free timeouts. To kind of get some rest, get some subs in. There could be. I haven't done Minnesota basketball in a couple of years now. But I think that you get a little lag in the kind of the middle of those halves where there hasn't been a break for a while. And even as officials, we do. I mean, you hate to admit it, but if you get a game that's up and down, it's nice to have that 1 minute timeout every 8 minutes where I can just get a quick breather and refocus and get back to work.
And that's a good thing working the NSIC and the D3 stuff. You get one of those.
You get immediate timeout. Yep.
So, and then following that up, what's a rule that maybe either hasn't been added or that, like, say you'd like to see added, or additionally, like, what's a rule that you do not like, you wish it was maybe modified? Maybe it's like, I like kind of the spirit of it, but I wish it was modified or tweaked.
Yeah, at the high school level, I'd like to see South Dakota bring in the restricted area for block charge plays.
Yep.
It's not as complicated as a lot of people think.
Yep.
I think we could handle that. And I'm trying to remember right, but I don't think high school has the flagrant foul where if we have multiple, if a same player gets multiple flagrant fouls, it should count towards ejection.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason. Well, obviously high school is a flagrant foul ejection.
Yep.
But like the intentional. So I'm kind of in between the college and high school rules right now. But at the college level, you have a scale of flagrant fouls, a flagrant 1 or a flagrant 2.
Yep.
And so if you get multiple flagrant 1s, it becomes a flagrant 2 ejection.
Yep.
So I'd like to see that at the high school level where, if the same kid has multiple intentional fouls, why are we not counting that towards ejection? Just like a technical.
Yeah, and I think we saw a little bit of that with the new rule in the NCAA where I think you're only allowed 3 flagrant, is it flagrant 1s now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and instead of having like, you could have 5 flagrant 1s.
Technically, yeah.
In the college, and same with the high school. Flagrant 1 is an intentional foul in high school. And so kind of seeing that creep into the game would be nice.
Yeah, those are the fouls we want to get out of the game. So why shouldn't we make the penalty harsher for those type of plays?
And I guess one could argue that it might be a NFHS. It's about the kids. It's about them playing. But I think there's a difference between. There's the difference between the wraparound, like sort of try to go
at half court to take away a fast break versus undercutting a kid going for a layup.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's the route we need to take as well in NFHS is just like, hey, we've got 2 tiers, and these ones are unacceptable, and even this wraparound, it's still going to be after 3. But again, I think they want what's best for the kids, and sometimes the officials would rather see a kid be gone because of a consistency in that.
Yeah,
but you kind of got to balance that with it being an extension of the classroom and everything like that. So it's a tough one. And then last question for you, kind of off the cuff here. You're a middle of the road official. I'm a middle of the road official. What is something for that newer official that's coming into the game that's starting this year, that started 2 years ago? What's some advice you would give them this year?
So good question. I had the privilege of observing at the summer jamboree.
Nice.
For Region 3.
Yeah.
And so I had a brand new official on one of my courts, and I mean, kid could run and he knew basketball, but needed work on mechanics and the patient, whistle we talked about before. So you don't want to give him too much. It's like, so that's why I kind of told him, I can give you everything, but you can't work on everything all at the same time.
Yep.
So I gave him a checklist, like work on your mechanics in the mirror. Don't try to work on them in the game because then, you're trying to focus on getting plays right now. So when you're doing games, focus on getting your plays right, kind of block out the rest of it. The mechanics piece of it, do it at home in a mirror, whatever you're comfortable with, and that becomes muscle memory. Mm-hmm. And then you can bring that to the game and you can, worry about that later. So that's kind of what I told him, and that, I mean, he was brand new.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of depends on where everyone's at. Newer official, I would always say patience is probably number 1.
Yep.
And then you'd hate to say mechanics is number 2, but mechanics is number 2. Mechanics is for the rest of us.
Correct.
Right. You're getting the play right or wrong. That's probably the most important thing for the game.
Yep.
And that's what the coaches are going to see. They're not so focused in on, this guy's got poor mechanics. Did he get the play right? That's all they care about.
Yep.
So, that's number 1. And then I'd say mechanics number 2. That's kind of that polish type of thing.
Sure. And then just kind of following up with that as well, is there something, because you mentioned coaches, and not necessarily, they don't care, but they kind of don't care. They just want the play called right. Is there something you would recommend to newer officials as in regard to like interacting with coaches, just different things like that? What would you say with that?
And I'm definitely not the greatest at talking to coaches. Sure. Financial person by nature, so not a big talker by any means. I mean, you really had to twist my arm to get me to come and do this. So, and I even told you, I go, are you sure you want to interview me? I'm not the most fun guy or anything, but that's fine. So, I mean, talking to coaches, short and sweet.
Yep.
What did you see? just explain, here's what I saw.
Yep.
If I got it wrong, I got it wrong.
Yep.
Not, you don't want to get it wrong, but this is my angle. This is what I saw. And stick to what did the defense do,
Yep.
who did what.
Yep.
Not just I thought,
Yep.
stay away from the I think, I thought. What did you see?
Yep.
And what did you call?
Yep.
So stick to the simple stuff. They can accept it and move on.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest thing too, is like they can't argue judgment. They can argue questionable judgment. And so like you
Yep.
said, with the think, the thought, now we can question a questionable judgment. When you say, I saw this and that's what I called.
Yep.
There's not really much arguing with that. They can just say you're wrong. Like that's
Yep.
that's about it. And then
Yep.
at that point you can just move on and hopefully we can, as I've said in other programs, you can get the coach to the next play, which is not that one.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean that's as good as I am. I know there's a lot of other guys that are smarter and
Yep.
better at talking to coaches. Something I'm working on personally. Actually, I would recommend from the camp setting that the book, The Verbal Judo,
Yep.
which I'm reading currently. Great book. Trying to implement it myself. So
Yeah.
I know it's something I'm working on this year.
Hey,
heads up, coaches.
Hey, next thing I'll probably try to link that in the description. We'll see if I'm allowed to do that, but I'll link it in the description of this video so people can check it out or even not contact you, but check it out on Amazon or somewhere. I don't know if I'm allowed to name drop all these things, but we'll see. We'll put it in the description.
Well, if you get in trouble, you can blame it on me.
There we go. Anyway, yeah. Again, thanks, Jake, for swinging by, stopping in, and having this conversation with me. Anything you want to leave the people with here?
No, it's a pleasure, and it's fun to talk about basketball.
Yeah.
And officiating is kind of an addictive thing. Like I really feel like you have it or you don't.
Yep.
And the guys that officiate, they love it because they love the camaraderie. They love giving back to the sport.
Yep.
They love hanging out with the guys, and they kind of love the competitive nature of, you're striving towards perfection.
Yep.
Every game you go to, you're never going to get there, but you're striving towards that. So there's like that little bit of competitiveness to it. And I think we all kind of find that. So I would just put out there, anyone who catches this, give it a try.
Yep.
Sign up and see if you like it or not. Maybe it's not for you. That's fine. At least you tried.
Yep.
Nothing hurt, and we can always use more officials.
Yep, absolutely. And with that, I will tell you guys, this has been the Irenic Ref podcast with Jake Studer. I'm your host, Andrew Gross, and we'll see you next time.